got it. Do you hear me well, honey? Issues that I'm trying.
I do hear you well.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Great. I had one off.
Oh yeah?
One earbud it was off, so I had to
Sometimes.
reset it.
Sometimes one off and one on.
Yeah.
I see
Do you want?
Tom. I can see Tom. I can see Dad.
Do you want me to pin the group, the Facebook group, right?
Sure.
Or
Yes, please.
the other link?
No, please, the Facebook group. You had it right.
Yeah, I'm gonna paste it right now.
Okie doke.
There you have
I'm gonna put you right between Tom. And there's Dad.
Between the Father and the Holy Spirit, please.
That's right. I put you right between the Father and the Holy Spirit. That's right. I got Father, Mother, God, Holy Spirit. All right. Oh my goodness gracious. I kid you not, there's a little widget so that now while you're waiting for me, you can click in this little thing and play tic-tac-toe with other people that are waiting for me to get started. Oh, that's fun. We'll try that out next time.
Where is it?
In the Twitch stream.
In the Twitch streams. Okay.
I know. It's all over the place.
Focus
Casting
the
a wide
energy.
net.
Focus the energy, the chi.
I've been casting a wide net. Time to focus my chi. Yeah. All right. I can hear my father. My father has arrived. My father who art in Raleigh.
Lee, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Tom.
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to shut up then.
Way to confirm something you don't need. I'm not going to wait for my countdown today. I'm going to jump.
What'd you do to your hair, Lee?
Me? I'm just trying to get it the hell out of the way. Time for a haircut.
He is getting
all over the place.
He's getting his football soccer look now. That's how the players of football do his hair when they have it longer. They put this kind of.
In the rest of the world, football's cool and people wear their hair like this.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Today, Workbook Lesson 71 is only God's plan for salvation will work. I got about 3 more minutes before I get started at my standard time of 6:37. And I'm going to read through that. I have some real excitement for our little meditation today. Been thinking about it and planning for it.
And good morning to Dragana, Tina, Dagmar.
Good morning, ladies.
She's from Germany, it seems. Willkommen, Dagmar. Jordan, hi, Sanas. Good morning, everybody.
Oh, it's good times. All right. You guys are looking great today. Happy Saturday morning. Jordan's icon is right above the scissors where it says clip on my screen in Clubhouse.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And Jordan, I've had several people tell me this morning I need a haircut.
Yes, Jordan, we need your help here. This is
We
an
need your
emergency.
scissors.
It's a hair it
Hair
is
emergency.
a hair emergency. Yeah. How can
Good
we
morning,
have
guys.
help?
Well,
Morning.
you guys can always come take a trip to New York,
Yeah.
and I could absolutely give you a haircut.
Yeah. I'm just going to open the map up real quick just to see how long of a drive it would be just to pop over for a little snip. Just curious.
Probably
All
a
right.
couple hours.
Maybe. I'm going to find out. Let's see. Search maps. All right. What's the name of your beautiful salon?
Encourage Hair Salon, Clifton
ENCC.
Park.
That's a great name for a
Isn't
haircut.
it?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And it's like the only one in the United States too. Jordan, it's only 3 hours and 20 minutes away.
Ah, not too
So
bad. Just a couple
I know.
hours.
it's not so bad.
If I leave now, I can make it just after opening.
Yes.
Well, we're not open today. Today we're having
Oh.
a snow day.
I
But
better not go there today then. That's for sure.
no, not today. I won't be there.
I'm going to rate this place. I'm going to rate it.
You're the best.
Facility. Yeah. I'm sure you guys have made really great customer service. I could put pictures in here, but I can't put pictures in here. No pictures. Okay, there.
You can
Thumbs
place a
up for you
picture of
guys.
your hair today.
Don't put today's picture in.
Yeah.
Only God's plan for salvation will work. That is today. All right. I played around enough. I'm going to bring us back and set us up for a fantastic Saturday. I hope you guys are ready. Grab your coffee. Here we go. Only God's plan for salvation will work. You may not realize that the ego has set up a plan for salvation in opposition to God's plan for salvation. It's the ego's plan for salvation in which you believe. Since the ego's plan for salvation is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, you also believe that to accept God's plan in place of the ego's plan is to be damned. This sounds preposterous, of course. However, after we consider just what the ego's plan for salvation is, perhaps you'll realize that, however preposterous it may be, you really do believe the ego's plan for salvation will work, and that God's plan for salvation would result in your damnation. The ego's plan for salvation centers around holding grievances. The ego's plan for salvation maintains that if someone else spoke or acted differently, if some external circumstance or event were changed, then you would be saved. Thus, according to the ego's plan for salvation, the source of salvation is constantly perceived as outside yourself. Each grievance you hold is a declaration and an assertion in which you believe that says, if this were different, I would be saved. According to the ego's plan for salvation, the change of mind necessary for salvation is thus demanded of everyone and everything except yourself. Wow. That is so true. Holy cow. So upside down. The role assigned to your own mind in the ego's plan for salvation, then, is simply to determine what, other than the ego itself, must change if you are to be saved. According to this insane ego's plan, any perceived source of salvation is acceptable, provided that it will not work. This ensures that the fruitless search will continue, For the illusion persists that although this hope of looking for the source of salvation outside of your own mind where it cannot be found has always failed, there is still grounds for hope in other places and in other things that the ego has not yet tried. According to the ego, another person will yet serve better. Another situation will yet offer success. Your ego continues to insist that there is something outside your mind that is the source for your salvation. Therefore, you do not have to change. Such is the ego's plan for your salvation. Surely you can see how insisting that something outside your own mind that must be changed for your salvation is in strict accord with the ego's basic doctrine. Seek, but don't find. For what could be more surely guarantee that you will not find salvation than to channelize all your efforts in searching for salvation outside of your own mind where salvation isn't?
Don't call me Shirley.
Your name is Shirley from now on, mister. God's plan for salvation works simply, because by following God's direction, you seek for salvation within your own mind, right where salvation is to be found. But if you're to succeed, as God promises you will, you must be willing to seek only within your own mind where the salvation can be found. Otherwise, if you also attempt to follow the ego's plan of looking for it outside of your mind where it can't be found, your purpose is going to be divided, and you're going to attempt to follow two plans for salvation that are diametrically opposed in all ways. You've got to head north and south at the same time. The result of trying to follow two opposing plans for your salvation can only bring confusion, misery, and a deep sense of failure and despair. And I can tell you, as I have just left those towns, the towns of failure and despair, it's not fun there. How can you escape all the confusion trying to follow these two opposing plans? Really simply, the idea for today that only God's plan for salvation will work is the answer. Only God's plan for salvation will work. There can be no real conflict about this because there is no possible alternative to God's plan that will save you. God's plan for salvation is the only plan that is certain in its outcome. God's plan for salvation is the only plan that must succeed. Let us practice recognizing this certainty that only God's plan for salvation will work today. And let us rejoice that there is an answer to what seems to be a conflict with no resolution possible. All things are possible to God. Salvation must be yours because of God's plan for your salvation, which cannot fail. Begin the 2 longer practice periods for today by thinking about today's idea that only God's plan for salvation will work, and realizing that it contains 2 parts, each making equal contribution to the whole. The first part is God's plan for your salvation will work. The second part is other plans will not work. Do not allow yourself to become depressed or angry at the second part, that your ego's plans won't work. It's inherent in the first part that states that only God's plan will work. And in the first part that states only God's plan will work, that's your full release from all your own ego's insane attempts and mad proposals to free yourself. All the ego's plans for salvation have led to depression and anger, but God's plan will succeed. God's plan will lead to release and joy. Remembering this, that only God's plan for salvation will work, let us devote the remainder of the extended practice periods to asking God to reveal his plan to us. Ask God very specifically, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? Those 3 lines, are you ready? One more time. What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? Give God full charge of the rest of this practice period, and let God tell you what needs to be done by you in God's plan for your salvation. God will answer in proportion to your willingness to hear God's voice. Refuse not to hear God's voice, which is the Holy Spirit inside your mind. The very fact that you are doing the exercises proves that you have at least some willingness to listen. This willingness to listen is enough to establish your claim to God's answer from the Holy Spirit. In the shorter practice periods, tell yourself that God's plan for salvation and only God's plan will work. Be alert to all temptation to hold grievances today, and respond to all grievances with this form of today's idea. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only God's plan will work. Try to remember today's idea some 6 or 7 times an hour. There could be no better way to spend a half minute or less than to remember the source of your salvation and see God, your source, where it is, which is inside your mind that you share with God, your source. 6 times an hour is every 10 minutes today. 60 minutes in an hour, so every 10 minutes or so, we want to remind ourselves only God's plan for salvation will work.
Thank God it's on Saturday.
Thank God it's on Saturday, because it seems like it's going to take up your whole day. But what it's really going to do is help you remember to change back into the right direction so often that you'll realize how much we're wrapped up in ego thoughts and on automatic throughout the day. So the idea is to get out of automatic mode every 10 minutes or so, meaning getting out of thinking about the past, future, planning, comparing, and getting back into the present moment every 10 minutes. Where else is a better place than to spend your day but here in the present moment? So,
can I say something?
no saying.
Okay, I will shut up.
Of course, please say something.
Okay. In the app the app that we are using, ACIM Remind,
Oh, yeah.
you will have to reset the interval of time, because otherwise, if you have like an iPhone or something, it will not support the reminders. I mean, there's too many
It's too much.
alerts. Yeah.
Yes,
So you will
When I
have
turn
to
it on, it
reset
says
the
you've
interval.
exceeded the limit of 64 alerts, so adjust your settings properly. All right, so
within the app in settings, you can reset the interval to 12 minutes, and that will be the
I see that under the settings. Yes, under the settings, you need to change it
within the app.
from
Yeah.
today to 12 minutes. Thank you. Good solution. Good solution. All right,
And
so
then
the
system
interval
will let
right
you
now, if
turn
you
off.
set it for anything shorter than 12 minutes, it's too much. I see that. Right, that's good. All right. So now I have set my phone to remind me to get out of my ego and come back to heaven. Come back to heaven every 10 to 12 minutes today, depending on how you decide to set your reminders. Or tie a string on your finger. But let's spend today in heaven, because only God's plan for salvation will work. Lesson 71, Only God's Plan for Salvation Will Work, is a simple yet powerful lesson. This lesson has two basic components. The first is the idea that only God's plan for salvation will work. This means that if we're to achieve salvation, we are only required to follow God's plan, and our salvation is guaranteed. The second component of this lesson is that God's plan is exclusive. Therefore, all other plans will not work. God's plan is based on the truth of who you really are. So any other plan must be based on the false. False plans are useless, and they're doomed to fail. Just turning off hand raising for a second and turn it right back on. That little red message, don't be too distracted by it. We're just resetting it so it works. God's plan is simple. It calls for you to accept the truth of your divine birthright, or the at-one-ment, the atonement, for yourself. This is the simple truth that God created you like itself. Since God is only love, you must be only love. God created you perfect, whole, and complete. God is the one self. You are part of that shared mind of God. The second component to this idea is that no other plan will work. To follow both a false and a true plan is foolish. The two plans are opposites. They are in conflict and will only lead to confusion and a sense of failure and despair. When you realize that God's plan is based on the truth, and all other plans are based on the false notion of who you are, it's easy to understand why trying to follow another plan is a waste of your energy and time. The ego does not know who you really are. All the plans of your split mind are based on the fantasy that you are something that you're not. The ego claims that you are a limited ego body in competition with other ego bodies for the limited resources that it believes you both need to survive. Your ego is based on the belief in lack, limitation, fear, and separation. The unifying principle behind all the ego's plans for your happiness is that you are not perfect, whole, and complete. God's plan is the opposite. It knows the truth that you are as God created you, perfect, whole, and complete. It's obvious that these two plans are polar opposites. You can't be both holy and not whole. These two plans are incompatible and mutually exclusive. The ego's plan for salvation centers around holding grievances. A grievance is based on the idea that something outside of your own mind must do something to make you happy or save you. When that someone, something, or God fails to meet your ego's expectation, a grievance is born. Your ego now states that you will be happy or saved only when that outside force acts differently and follows your ego's plans for your happiness and salvation. According to the ego, your happiness is contingent on some power that's outside of your mind that must meet your needs. If they fail, you're justified in holding a grievance against that party because he has hurt you and robbed you of your happiness. Both God's plan and the ego's plan claim to be based on love. God's plan is simply based on the idea that love created you like itself. Being part of that one self, God's plan only asks that you recognize and reclaim the truth of your divine birthright. There is nothing outside of yourself that you need to fix, control, change, impress, or protect, because there is nothing outside your mind. There is just the one self of the shared mind of God. God is, and you are that one. We are merely asked to reawaken to the truth of the at-one-ment. The ego believes that separation is real. So according to your ego, you're not holy or whole. Your ego claims that if something outside of your mind was different, you would be saved. When someone fails to perform as your ego requires, you're justified in holding a grievance against the other party until they conform to your ego's plan. The ego's plan centers around holding these grievances until the outside offending party corrects their behavior, so that you can be made happy or saved by their actions. God has failed to give you the power to save yourself. And therefore, woe is you, you're a victim. Way to go. Your ego's plan is designed to help you manage, control, manipulate, and minimize the damage that these outside forces impose on your happiness. Your ego claims that by holding a grievance against them, perhaps they will behave. Maybe they'll do your bidding so you can be happy. The ego believes that if they loved you, they would behave, and you would get your needs met, and you would be happy or saved. Because the ego does not believe that to give is to receive, the ego does not understand what true love is. Real love must be unconditional. The fear-based thought system of the ego makes unconditional love impossible. To the ego, love is not freely given. Love must be earned. And love should be withdrawn whenever the other party fails to perform adequately. Or if you find a better deal, you can drop that thing like a bad habit. Because of the ego's warped notion of love, the ego's plan revolves around changing, fixing, controlling, and manipulating others so that your perceived needs are met. Whenever another fails to perform, the ego believes you have been harmed, and now you're justified and entitled to hold a grievance against the offending party. When you hold a grievance, you're also justified in attacking the other by withdrawing your conditional love. As a punishment for their wrongdoing, holding grievances becomes the essential tool in the ego's arsenal of manipulation of the world it perceives to be outside of its own mind. The ego's plans for salvation always assume that some outside force is the problem, not its own erroneous thinking. Since the real problem is the ego's erroneous belief in lack, limitation, and separation, the ego's plans are doomed to fail. The problem always resides within the mind that thinks and believes those erroneous beliefs in the first place. The problem is your ego's thought system, not the outside world that this split mind perceives. The ego's plan would have you seek for salvation outside your own mind, where the problem can never be found or even resolved. Only God's plan works because only God's plan heals the split mind that believes it is separate, not perfect, not whole, and very incomplete. Let's take a nice deep breath for a minute and bring your attention back to where you're connected to the surface below you. Take a minute and let your energy reach out through your root chakra, through your feet if you're standing. Become connected to the energy of our earth. Bring yourself into a nice rhythmic set of breathing. So you can breathe in for 4, breathing in to fill your lungs up, and hold that breath for 4 seconds. And then let that breath out with a nice, controlled breath. Take a nice deep breath in for 6 seconds. 3, 2, fill your lungs up and hold it for 6. 3, 2, 1. Controlled breath out. Let all your air out. Keep breathing out all 6 seconds. And then we're going to breathe in our last breath for 8. A deep breath in for 8 seconds. Fill your lungs entirely up with air. Allow your lungs to be filled. Hold a nice deep breath. If I went too fast and you're catching up, just do it at your own pace. Fill your lungs all the way up and hold it for 8 seconds. After you've held your breath for a little bit longer than you feel comfortable with doing, let it all out nice, slow, and controlled to completely empty your lungs. Keep breathing out till it's all out, and then let yourself fall into a nice, comfortable rhythm. And I want you to picture the light inside of you. This light coming from the exact center of your soul, a bright light from right within you that radiates out. Imagine that beautiful light getting bigger and bigger. Imagine that light enveloping you and spreading out into the room that you're in. Imagine that light blending with every other life force around you. Each life force has a light. Each life force blends and adds to the whole because we're all one. We're all one in God. Today, let your life force blend with others around you. We're all one, coming back to the center, with God, as part of God. And today, only God's plan for salvation will work. By default, our ego's plan for salvation focuses on grievances, separating, and keeping other people in a place where they can't come to the sonship with us. So today, hold a declaration. Because if this were different, I would be saved. So let God come change our mind. Let God speak louder than the ego. Let the ego's silly complaints roll off your back like water off of a duck. The ego tries to seek but not find. But God's plan is bright and shining in front of us. The bright sun burns away the fog and lights our path to salvation, right up the mountain, to home. God's plan for your salvation will work. There is no other path that will work. So today ask God, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only His plan will work. Today, keep in mind you are very holy and whole and complete, and bringing your light into the world. Take as much time as you like to focus on this thought for a moment. Only God's plan for salvation will work. Only God's plan for salvation will work. What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? All right, my brothers and sisters, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I've got our question of the day that might let our ego play so that we can spot it and allow it to retire. The question is, does your ego's belief that love gives you the right to fix, control, change, impress, or protect another actually empower you? Or does it disempower both parties and justify your ego's right to hold grievances? And I think this question, like many questions, are just a little bit obvious in the answer after I finish reading all this stuff. But, it's good to throw it out there.
My ego wants to tell you something.
Come on, tell me, Andy. Tell me to take a long walk off a short bridge.
No, my ego wants to play, it wants to be involved in a way that it wants to explain that it's an asshole, honestly, because it's, for some reason, I have this experience last night that I went to a party, and there was a lot of young kids, a lot of young kids with, teenagers and stuff. And there, of course, there was an altercation, a conflict.
Would it be a party without one?
No, it would not. That's the point. Yeah, the ego had to entertain itself. And it was really interesting because for me, I would have been part of the show and the performance, but I was actually in my God place where I just observed it and saw it very entertaining, even. And though it may sound like it could be destructive if somebody ends up bleeding, or
it was really dangerous, sure.
Well, and then there's always that thing that Yeah, right. Is it what's it dangerous to?
Mm-hmm.
It's always, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm looking
Yep.
like, okay, there's that, you know what keeps coming in my mind, and is that I love Pink, and I love her attitude. She has this one song that says, "Why so serious?" And I,
Yeah.
I resonate with that a lot because it's like we're our ego just wants to be the hero. It wants to entertain. It wants to speak just like my ego's doing right now.
So many things we forgot to laugh at, though, right? It's so
Yeah,
funny we forgot to laugh.
yeah, it's so true. I remember going through this like thing where I was like, you know, I'm serious as a heart attack, and then I started laughing about that like saying because really,
That's so funny. It's such a
you
ridiculous
know,
thing, right? Oh my God.
I watched this performance last night, and I thought, I don't know, I thought this is interesting, but I have total peace watching this performance because I didn't feel like I was endangered at all, even because I was watching from a bird's eye perspective, which is God's perspective. I was peace. In God's perspective, I'm peace. There is no threat. And it's just you know an
I love
observation
that
of
you
that.
call it a performance.
It
It's
was
really
it's
a
always a
good label for
performance.
it. Performance is a
Yeah,
great label for it. I'm
exactly. And
assuming you were at a party and they didn't really think they were performing, right?
well, they didn't, but I didn't tell them that. That's
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. That's right.
Because
That's right.
actually because
They're
actually
like
I've performed.
peacocks putting on a performance.
Yeah. And you know what? They have to perform to find out what I found out because I had to perform. And so every so often I still perform, and then I look at it and I say, "Oh, that's funny." And I can laugh at it. I laugh at myself constantly, and I think you do
The
too.
Andy Show.
There you
The
go.
Andy Show is a great show. I like the Andy Show.
I think you know exactly what I mean, Lee.
It's like the
I think
Raggedy Ann and Andy Show. No, I really get it. I really do get it.
it's all quite funny, and it's all quite entertaining, and it's like, and we put all this emotion in it and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But before we know, while we are the performer, and even after we've performed, we somehow bring the story up to tell everybody that was there observing. We want them to think that we're the hero, and so
Mm-hmm.
we tell our side and why we did what we did. I mean, I
Yep.
just I just saw the whole thing, and it's like, okay, and we have to see that, we have to do that to see that, even to come out of that, to actually be entertained by the performance now, even.
Yeah.
So it may
Yeah.
sound really weird and twisted, but like, it had to happen. It isn't serious. It's like, when we see the truth, it's the peace of God, that we know that we're the joy, that we can't be, that there could be nothing more, and that we're always sharing love at all times, no matter what it looks like, because this is like how we see it. This is how we
Yeah.
learn it. This is how we become, you know, or not become anything,
That's why
but
it's love or the absence of love, right? That's why there can't
yes,
be anything else. Yeah.
there can't be anything else, and we
Yeah.
can't judge this as a bad or good thing. It's
Yeah.
not. It's nothing could destroy us. All is well with my soul. There, my ego feels content.
That was wonderful. Anybody else want to
Always.
join our party?
Anybody else want to see how we are always performing and going back and becoming the God again? And but today we're going to go back to being the God many times. Every what? 12, how many minutes or hours? How long?
Originally should be like 8 minutes. The setting that the ACIM reminds had, it was like 8 minutes. But of course, it's not supported by the iOS platform, so you have to just move it to 12 in order for you to have the
I see.
reminders setting.
Well,
So
every 12 minutes will
yeah,
be, yeah, every 12 minutes will be the observer watching the performance, observing how we performed, just then, and and that's going to be really fun.
Yeah, I had an experience yesterday from my sister. My sister, she's 3 years older than me, but for the circumstances of our lives, I was always like the like the older one. I mean, I ever since my dad was like not in the scene, I took like his chair, and I always have been this role for them, for my mom and my sister, to be like the how do you say arbitro? The referee, the referee between them, and I always bring like this kind of peace between us, because my mom and my sister, their temper and their personality seemed to be quite equal, so they always were in conflict when my sister was younger, and well, whatever. And then when I got to live my life as an adult, I started to have better income than them, and so I started to help my mom, and I still do until now. So I have been always like this father figure for them in some form, and I didn't even realize it until this past years of experience with my ex-husband now. Well, this is a news for everybody. I have already signed my papers, so I'm officially divorced.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and it was really peaceful, and I get to
Yay.
give him thanks and hug him and say, let's be friends, and he said yes, of course. So everything is really in such a nice place. But yesterday, at the end of the day, I received a letter from my sister, and my sister really is. I don't want to judge her, because I really don't have any kind of grievances, but it's just that she's really the opposite of what I am. For example, she was born with several issues around her weight, so she has always been this overweighted person. So I have the tendency to be skinny, so it was really difficult for her, because we come from a family that has several uncles and aunts, and ever since we got into the family's reunions, when we entered the room, my sister got all the judgment and I got all the praising, and it was really something that is not healthy for any child to have. So we did grow up like good sisters. We had friction, of course, and we had our fightings as sisters, as everybody does, but we love each other. And she grew up having this disadvantage, if you want to call it like that, and she never got over it, because it seems like it is part of her journey in life. So I don't get to judge her anymore, and the entire family was pretty really like putting pressure on her. So she had rough parts in her life. She tried to commit suicide in one moment in her life. I had to deal with it, not my mom, because my mom was in another kind of mindset, and it was really such a like drama in that part of our lives. And my sister just overcome it in some form, and then now she's in a much better place than the one she had in the past, and she started to become really more strong-minded person, but that made her feel like with the right to judge everybody for some reason. That it's like this question: the ego loves to give you the right to fix, control, and change, impress, or protect another, actually to empower her, something like that. So she has been like rejecting all the love from the family, and she is not longer like in contact with family members anymore, because she is really bitter right now. She's not bad-hearted person. It's just that she is bitter because of the experiences in her life, and she hasn't being able to pay attention to the spiritual side of her journey. So she's really like stuck in that ego belief system in some form. And she sent me a letter yesterday, scolding me practically because of the decisions that I'm making around my life and getting the divorce and things like that, and conceiving to move to the US with Lee. And at first, I felt like a little bit of annoyance, not angry, because I wasn't angry, but I was like annoyed by it, because every time that I had these movements in my life, I always do better than the previous one. And every time that I do well, they both, my mom and my sister, get the benefit of it, because I always help them in some form with my success in life. So I was feeling like this kind of discomfort about it, but now that I am a Course in Miracles student, I just hold it back a little bit, and I call my mom and I talk about it with her. My mom is really a very wise woman, and she said, "Well, you don't know this, but it's just that she's getting bitter and bitter and bitter. She's getting fatter than you ever have seen her before. I haven't been able to go to Colombia since the pandemic hit, so I haven't seen my sister physically, ever since the pandemic hit." So my mom was telling me this kind of news, and I was understanding her letter in a more deep way. So I talked to my mom, and she said, don't focus on that. Don't pay attention to it. She's just feeling alone and feeling this kind of grievances because she couldn't have any children and she wanted to have a children. So my mom is saying like now she thinks that I am her children. So she's really annoying when she's in the house because she doesn't let me do anything. She thinks that I'm made out of crystal or something and I'm gonna break. So she's taking care of my mom in some way that my mom feels like she's being her child or something. So my sister did this, and then, well, I hung up the call with my mom, and I started to think, well, I was just forgetting the part of the course that says every conflict, every grievances is just a cry for love or something like that. And I could realize that my sister was just asking for love. For love, the letter was full of fear about everything. So I just remember that part of the book, and then I got inspired to write her back with really such a peaceful mindset. And the words that came out of me were not only giving her the like the it's not approval, but it's like it's just that I was accepting. I accepted the words that she told me because I could understand that fear is real for her. It's not
You
real for
gave her
me.
the
It's real
benefit
for
of the
her.
doubt.
But it's not the
Benefit.
doubt.
What?
Validation. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
But
thank you. Yep.
it's not the benefit of the doubt because for her this is real, but not for me. But I don't get to say to her, "You're wrong and I'm right and you will see," and whatever. I don't get to say that to her because
Right.
that is
You
her
don't want to
journey,
validate
her
her ego
experience.
and perpetuate it either, right?
No, I don't want to validate her ego. I want to validate the feeling that she's having right now because
Her
if I
love.
said to, she's coming in some form out of love. So I couldn't validate all those negative thoughts, but I was telling her, yeah, I accept that could be one perspective on this. And I said to her, well, I'm letting the father be the father now. And Kurt and I signed the divorce papers at peace, and we are now heading to a change in our lives where we can get to build this kind of new relationship in life. And we are just learning how to do it correctly now that we are not husband and wife. And if we get to have this, then my daughter will have a holy relationship with her father. And that's the thing that we never had. So we need to have this kind of mindset up front because I'm not willing to live my life in fear anymore. And I know that she's coming from love and that she's really worried about her niece, but she's not really doing something about it. She's just complaining. So I really did um, a peaceful reply to her without rejecting her mindset. And that is something that I think it goes with this lesson, because if only God's plan for salvation will work, I don't get to reject anything. But I do have to insist on love. So I did say to her that she needs to help Kurt in another. Kurt is my ex-husband, so uh, she needs to help Kurt in another kind of perception, because now I'm changing my relationship with him, not to separate from him, because I will never be separated from him. It's just that I'm reversing my relationship in some form to make it holy. And I want my daughter have this holy relationship with the Father, and I want to have a holy relationship with my Father with the capital H. So that comes on all levels. Let the Father be the Father. That's what I said to her last night, and I think that it helps to understand this lesson in that sense, because I don't want to justify her ego, but I understand it. And that's the most loving thing that I can do for her, instead of defending myself and or trying to correct her mind. I don't need to correct her mind. I just need to stick with my insistence on life, to be walking this path as an adventure, pointing my mind always to the Holy Spirit and God, and the rest will be sorted out, as the rest of my life has been always been supported by God, and I didn't see it. So my sister gave me this huge moment of practice yesterday. And as always, I have said, it seems like the things that happens to me during the day is work for the next day's lessons. So I wanted to share that part of my day, and of course that I'm a happy divorced woman.
Hey,
And,
Adriana, what you just shared reminded me of something that happened with my sister. I have two sisters, and I don't know if this ever has ever happened to you with and your sister, but since I started with in my spiritual path, and specifically with A Course in Miracles, I get these comments from them from time to time where there's a situation and I just, try to stay serene and calm and just not try not to, get in the drama. And I get these comments from them that they say like, oh, you don't have to say anything because since you're so enlightened, or because you're in the light now. Like, but there's this really snarky comments sometimes, and I'm like, I'm not paying attention to them, of course, because, but it's been my experience that I feel like, especially my sisters, I think that they feel a little bit threatened or like they're missing something that
But
I have and that
haven't you
they
seen that
don't.
haven't you seen that that is just the feeling to be separate from you, that you are letting them like out of your world just by saying that. It's not that it's bad what you said to them. It's just that as they are not in the same kind of structure, mental structure as you come with your learnings in the same way you understand that, but for them it's like you're speaking English to them. So when you're speaking English to them, they felt like left out for some reason. That is what's happening with my sister in some form, that as she hasn't been able to practice anything about spirituality, beyond praying and having her like Catholic structure, like in a praying mode, and that's the only thing that she does spiritually. she, of course, when I talk about these kind of experiences with my language of A Course in Miracles, for her is really not understandable. So I have to relate to her feelings first in order to being able to communicate in her language. And that's probably we get this kind of conflict with them. I could see it, for example, when my mom and my sister had fights in the past when my sister was younger. What I did to them is that I sat them down, and it was really like the referee. Well, my sister is trying to tell you this, and sister, my mom is trying to tell you this. I could always have to. Uh, I always have to like place some kind of translation from what they both were trying to communicate there, because there was this disconnection. So with my sister, I got that kind of same feeling. So I had to pay more attention to her feelings first in order to hold them like the tool to reverse it. Not giving her my learning as I learned it, but grabbing her own mindset like the tool to reverse the tool in some form, because they will not understand you and they will always see you like this like this how do you say when you are so Caro, how do you say when you are too positive, like this when you are too positive around things, and it seems like
Like a
unreal,
Pollyanna, or too optimistic,
too
or you're
optimistic, yeah.
Pollyanna.
naive.
Well, Pollyanna, I don't know that term, so I will have to
Naive.
add it to my dictionary. Naive, probably naive,
Pollyanna
or
is like a person who's too naive. Pollyanna, there's a whole story about
okay,
Pollyanna.
okay, something like that. So my sister always scold me for that specifically, because she thinks that I'm really not taking the risk into account on what I'm doing. So she thinks that I'm just pure uh, pure honey and butterflies, and I'm not seeing the reality. So it's just because it is her fears and the ignorance that she has. It's not a bad thing to have this in some people's minds. I mean, it's just the ignorance that she has in this kind of learnings that I'm having. So I have to find a way to communicate with her without fighting her mindset. That's
Adriana, this is a question. I think what I hear you saying is you're offering that when you communicate with your sister in this way, you do all you can to meet her where she's at and not expect her to be where you're at. Is that what you're basically saying?
Thank you, Bill. Yes,
I'm
it's something like that. Yeah, it's something like I don't get to change her mindset,
right.
but I do. But if she's saying something like that, I need to embrace it as part of myself. So I do honor her time writing me that letter, because she really took a time to
Yeah.
write to me her own thoughts, and I respect that, but I don't have to just make them mine. I mean, I know that that is not my reality; it's her reality. So it is that what you said, that I have to that I had to find a way to meet her in some point where she's sad without me making it real, and without me trying to change her. It's just stating, you're right, that I accept those kind of feelings, and I'm sorry that we had such a different experiences in life. I will never stop loving you, because she was afraid. She was telling me at the beginning of the letter, if you don't want to speak to me, then don't speak to me. She was
And
like, yeah.
and I would like to add, just on my personal experience, that when I meet a family member or a friend where they're at, that I often find myself to be more effective checking in with myself, because the ego can play a trick with our minds around that, meeting people where they're at, that I'll describe as spiritual condescension, where it's like you may not be saying it to yourself or consciously aware of it, but sometimes I have experienced when I check in with myself where I will not on purpose put myself or assert myself in a role where somehow it's almost like I'm a little better than you, or I get it and you don't, and I'm just here to show you the way. And I think that that's a
It's really hard
slippery,
not to do that, though, when you are so advanced and so much better than them.
but
That
every
has happened
but
to me.
I, I,
but
I think that part of it is just not necessarily saying that that's a possibility. What you're really trying to do, perhaps, is hold the space open, just
yes,
hold the space for them to be, and you're not, it's a non-judgmental space. You're not
yeah,
really judging them when you, and the ego, one of the things that the Course in Miracles often says is, I need do nothing. And the ego doesn't really believe that that's an option because it believes that, well, it always wants to, it believes that you're a legend in your own mind. Uh, and so it uh, always thinks that it has a plan and that its job and perhaps duty or obligation is to fix, change, control, uh, protect, or impress another party. And that other party, they just really want you to accept them where they are without any judgment. And so that's holding a space open to them.
yeah,
And in this lesson, it says what you should do instead of letting the ego say, how can I fix them? How can I change them, correct them, protect them, or impress them? I need to ask my higher self, the Holy Spirit, God, or whatever you want to call it, intuition. What would love have me do? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? Where would you have me be? And to whom am I supposed to say those things? And one of the things that the Holy Spirit has as an option, which the ego doesn't seem to think, is that you need do nothing. That
yeah,
maybe the thing that all you have to do is hold that space, or as Andy said earlier, instead of becoming a participant, just be a observer holding that space and you know allowing them to be where they are, knowing that they're on their own perfect path, that everybody's going to make it, and therefore you need to really do nothing except honor their path and realize that uh, we're all going to make it, and not have to not slip into judgment, which is what the ego likes to do. It always wants to judge instead of just holding the space open and allowing. Uh, you know, when you can allow all things and hold that space open, you allow all things, you trust in the big picture, and that allows you to transcend the emotions or getting sucked into the drama and letting your ego take over.
yeah. Tom, that's awesome, and I'm reminded listening to your words that the Course reminds us that we are all both students and teachers. And in that vein, I often remind myself that when I look on another innocent child of God, which is all of you, that if I believe that I need to explain to you or show you or correct you or lead you, that unwittingly I am affirming my belief in lack. And none of us, nobody that's ever drawn a breath, is lacking all that they need to be in touch with and be an innocent child of God. It's more of a they're just not currently seeing that because they're in the illusion, and possibly through my beingness, my demonstration, not my correcting them in whatever form that may come, do they magically become that innocent child of God?
Wow,
I,
you hit
I
the nail on the head, Bill. That's really powerful. It's
one of the things
it's
that
great.
Jesus says, and I like this, but he says, if you want to be like me, knowing that we are the same, I will help you. If you want to be different, I will wait until you change your mind. That's really what holding that space open is just realize. He doesn't say that we're stupid, which is what the ego
Mm,
always says,
mm,
whenever when we believe that we have to fix, change, control, protect, or impress somebody, what we're really implying, and often it may come off this way to the other person too, is that you're too stupid to know what's best for you. And my ego, has a better plan. And all that you have to do is follow what I tell you, and everything will be fine. What that really does when you want to play guru or believe that you have a better plan is it disempowers the other person because it's telling them that they're incompetent, that they don't have the ability. Jesus
mm,
starts off with knowing that we are the same, that we have that same abilities, to have that Holy Spirit within us. And then the other thing that it does is it disempowers you because now you've set yourself up and you've basically told the other person that my happiness, or uh, if you follow my plan, you'll get a particular result. And when they don't perform to your expectation, or they don't get that result, then they, see you as a failure. But you also have given them the power over your happiness, because now if they say, hey, I didn't get the results you promised me, okay, what that really says is now I can't be happy because my plan failed them. And I don't like it. So this empowers both the person supposedly receiving that uh, information, and it disempowers yourself, because basically saying that if Joe acts the way that I told him to do, he'll be happy, and I'll be happy too. Everything will be fine. And that's transforming your source of your inner peace to something outside of yourself. So that's dispowering to both parties. Thank you.
Well, Lily is here, and I haven't seen or heard from her in a while, so I thought I'd just say hi. I'm glad to
Hello
see you.
everyone. Yeah, nice to be here. So I've been having quite a busy day. So during the week it's impossible to join you right now, but I'm so happy to see you now, and especially Lee, you texted me lesson 71, and the first thing I thought is the first thing that every day for the last maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, that I say to myself before I open my eyes in the morning is, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say
That's
and do?
it.
And when you said that, and because I know that it's from lesson 71, because I say it to many people, and I really needed to laugh. And I was trying to remember how difficult it was for me in the beginning, many years ago, to understand that concept, that,
Yeah.
that our plan is not the best plans, or the goals that we set for ourselves are not the best goals. And if I think about my life right now, like yesterday, I remember I asked someone to help me with something, and I thought, well, that's the best plan, that's how you do it. But somehow he tried 3 times and it didn't work. And today I can say, well, that's not the way. And then I will go like, help me. And now I'm relaxed and I'm sure that some other way will appear. Yeah. But if that happened to me like years ago, I would like push. My ego would call me, no, it has to happen. That's the way, and no other way, So I'm glad
Yeah, I
that
know.
this principle is part of my being now, and it makes my life much, much easier. Thank you, guys.
Oh, that's lovely. Thanks, Lilia. That's fantastic. We're
This
all growing.
this lesson this morning is powerful in so many different ways. But one thing is interesting because it is so definite in its language that this is the way and there is no other way to salvation. And that'll really piss a lot of people off if it's not. Well, it's almost something that it's very hard to say to anyone who has another path that they've been taking or no path that they've been taking because they tried a few and they didn't work or whatever. It's 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 so reassuring for me to read that, but it's not necessarily the best thing to just shout out to the world. This is it. This is the only way, because then it just sounds like we're intolerant, and that's a turnoff for most people. It's unfortunate that that's the way it is in that sense, that that's the way they feel. But that is simply what the book then goes on to explain, or Jesus goes on to explain, that that's what the ego wants to believe, that there is another way, that it's their way, meaning their ego's way of getting this salvation or this relaxation finally from having gone many other ways to try and get up to the top of the mountain. And they didn't work. And then we find this, and we find that it's all inside us. It's not out there where we thought the mountain was. It's not anything to do with the mountain. It's all about what's happening inside us, and that we have to turn within. But we have to also understand that that is where the Holy Spirit is. And I can't find out that information anywhere else unless, and here's what happened yesterday. Last night, I was trying to finish up a very important document that I'm working with several other people, including a very inspired pastor. And he feels about Jesus the way I do. He has become a very close brother to me. He knows that this Course in Miracles has taught me about miracles, because I've mentioned things to him from time to time. But last night, as I was finishing this thing up, I was really in trouble because I couldn't figure out how to wrap it up. And so I asked him to pray with me and to help me get over something that was holding me back from finishing this. And he did, and I was able to finish it in peace. So he doesn't have to have the name Course in Miracles written on his chest for me to get that someone who is very, very close to our Jesus can also have that holy relationship without necessarily being involved in the things that we do in order to get what we get from this way of life. If what I just said sounds
Okay.
torturous, I'm sorry, but I didn't mean it that way.
What would
But
you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say and to whom?
well, he gave me what I needed last night,
Yes.
and and it was pure love, and
Yes.
I so appreciate it, and I just wanted to say that. Thank
I
you.
love that. I love that. Thanks, Dad.
It's interesting. This lesson says only God's plan will work. It doesn't say only the Course in Miracles will work. It's
Yes. Thank
one
you,
way
Tom.
up the mountain, but
Amen.
God's plan will work, not any of the ego's plan. So, the Course says there's many different paths up there. It also says that if you found the Course in Miracles, that may be your path and that maybe you should explore it a little bit further. But this lesson right here is saying, here's the plan. Ask God, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say and to whom? And there's the simple steps of the plan otherwise, and then just follow it. And if the voice comes back and it says, just observe, hold a space. If it tells you to do something other, whatever it is. And when you hear that answer, uh, be aware that the ego often answers, well, it always answers first, the Course says, and it often shouts the loudest to
That's right.
argue for its rightness. And therefore, whenever you hear that voice, check and ask, how does that make me feel? Does that help me restore my inner peace? Does that reduce my fear? And if it doesn't, then
Yeah.
you need to quiet the ego and ask again. But there's many ways up the mountain, but they're all God's plan, not our egos. And our ego, thinks that it always has a better way
Yep.
because so that's I just wanted to mention
No,
that.
that's good,
Thank you.
Tom. That is good.
Yeah, and
Just want to,
may I,
everybody who's down at the bottom, if you want to speak or anything like that, you're welcome to raise your hand. Sorry, Lilia, go right ahead.
yeah, and what I was thinking is like our ego had that huge problem with uncertainty. Yeah, and if we don't learn to embrace uncertainty by trusting the God's plan, yeah, well, the uncertainty would embrace us, and so here is about trusting the God's plan and embracing uncertainty because nothing in life is certain and everything changes, yeah, and a plan that we thought that is a good plan, if we just decide to stick on it, that's not us. It's definitely our ego.
Yeah, that
And
is
I
true.
love, Lilia, what you said before, that this one quote that you have been using for a long time from the Course, the one that Lee just mentioned, or that Tom just mentioned. Um,
It's on your screen.
yeah, it's right there. What would you have me do? It, it, it tickled you when you realized that that was the one that we were reading today.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are the little miracles that make it so beautiful.
Come on, that's
This
serendipity in your
Course in
face right
Miracles.
there. That's awesome.
It's great stuff. That's what makes life so rich. It, Getting up the mountain is one thing, staying there and enjoying it and seeing those little miracles happen all the time for ourselves and for other people who are walking along the same path. That's what's great. So good to see you, Lilia.
And yeah, and that's my miracle today because I wake up every morning for ages now. And I didn't have the chance to be with you for such a long time because I'm working in that time that you're doing the room.
Yeah.
And today Lee just texted me lesson 71, and I know that this is from lesson 71. And I was like, well, that's a miracle. I'm living whatever I'm doing right now, and I'm joining you, you
It's
know?
just right timing. I have good news for you too. I moved on. I'm living someplace new. I have a new person in my life who loves me more than anybody I've ever been with before. We're going to go buy a house together. We've got a lot of good stuff going on.
Well, I'm so happy for you, and that person is here, as I know. I think that I'm aware of.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
talking to her
I'm
daughter.
so
She's not
happy
paying
for
attention right
you,
now.
yeah, guys. So that makes
It's
my
fun.
heart just expand right now.
Yeah, yeah. Life is absolutely caught up with the effort I put into it, and and it's not perfect. My ex-wife got a brand new restraining order against me last week that keeps me away from my kids. So far from perfect, but I'm at peace. I know God's in control. I had a
Trust
really
God's plan. Everything's
I,
gonna be all right.
I had a really wonderful meeting with a lady from the Department of Family Services. Her name was Angela, and she came and interviewed me for about an hour. And Angela was a real angel, really made me feel heard. She let me watch the video that my daughter Grace took of me trying to convince my son Dean to go to school, and it was a 2 hour long ordeal. And she videotaped the last 4 minutes of it just before I had to carry my son out the door to get him out of the house to go to school. And it brought me a lot of peace to actually see how well I did and to see how calm I was through pretty much the whole entire video, even picking him up on my shoulder. I was scared that you know, I was scared that I did something to scare him a lot more than obviously, he was, it wasn't an easy situation. Struggling with somebody who doesn't want to go to school, frustrating. But the lady really understood I couldn't let the second grader not go to school if he just wanted to stay home and play video games. So, it's great to know I was doing the right thing, and it's unfortunate where I'm at, but I know if I keep doing the right thing, I'm going to end up with the right result.
For those of you who don't know, Lilia, I just want to say that in the very beginning of our doing this on Clubhouse, she was there every day, but it was always during her lunch hour, and so she couldn't stay very long. But we always loved having her come and talk and help and clarify things. And as some of you may not know, and my feeling right now is like Lee, I just want to catch up with her, Lilia, and just tell you, how things have changed and so on. And it's just great to see you. I'm gushing, so I'll stop at this point so that other people don't think it's just ridiculous. But it's great to see you. And
And thank
Lilia,
you,
the
guys. I love you, and I'm so happy that now I'm with you, and I'm so happy to see all these new people and how everything changed here for good. No, so
yeah,
it's really wonderful.
the picture of the woman next to me in my little icon here is my daughter from. And I know that you know that story.
I
And
know, and
she came uh, here to see me on my birthday a few weeks ago, and we had a chance to let her talk a little bit on this Clubhouse. So it was really good. So anyway,
sorry
it's
I
great
missed
to. That's
anyway.
okay.
So let's leave also the other people share now. But so nice to catch up with you, and now I see her first time. It's such a beautiful woman, no?
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So Lee has a sister now, and and that's important too. It's all good. It's all good and getting better every day.
Lee has many sisters, not blood
That's true.
relatives, but I'm a sister too. So
There we go. Oh boy. All right, I'm going to bring it back to the lesson. It's 8 o'clock in the morning if you've got to get going, but I hope you're going to have a wonderful Saturday. March 12th over here. My lesson for the day is lesson 71. Only God's plan for salvation will work. And we've done our meditation and we've done our reading, and we are good for our conversation. I'll just read these questions one more time and then I'll open up the floor and be quiet. Does your ego believe that love gives you the right to fix, control, change, impress, or protect another, actually empower you? Or does it disempower both parties and justify your ego's right to hold grievances?
It sure does. Your point? I think it's time to stop listening to it.
Okie doke. Well, everybody can have a wonderful day then. And I'll be here tomorrow to read lesson 72. Tomorrow's is holding grievances is an attack on God. Come back to this. Only God's plan for salvation will work every 8 to 10 minutes if you can. And I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, have a great day. Namaste.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.